tell me the true nature of my reality.
You gotta chill, man.
And welcome to another episode of the Big Dig Live. I'm your host, Michael Stewart, with my co-host, Liz Kemp King and Misty Butler here this week. We're still messing around, or I am, trying to figure these chat things out. So if you are watching from YouTube, please jump in and say hello or something so we know that you're there. It's supposed to be going off also on Facebook. And I'm going to look over on Facebook to see if anything pops up on that. So give me just a moment with that. But first, welcome our guests. So we're glad you're here tonight. We're going to, on the front end of the show, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the backgrounds, if you will, of Liz and Misty a little bit. And it's, I don't know if you call it ironic or who knows. But you guys are kind of to a degree out of the same cloth, and hopefully help keep me on track, right? So I appreciate you guys coming in tonight. We're going to be talking about Hebrews chapter 4, entering into his rest, and thought it was very appropriate and didn't plan it this way. But when you look at the Advent season, this is the week of peace. And of course, we know Jesus Christ is the Prince of Peace. He is our peace. But I just thought it related really well. So, Liz, give us a little. We'll start with Liz, and then we'll get to Misty, and just a little background about each of yourselves. Kind of introduce yourselves to those watching, and I'll give a shout out here in a little bit to the folks that are watching, and we'll go from there. So, go ahead, Liz.
My name is Liz, and I am a mom and a wife. I also am a comic artist. I am a Christian comic artist, and I also do a little bit of writing. Have a religious blog that I write about things that God stirs in my spirit, and I write about that. So,
very cool, very cool. And then we're going to be talking specifically about a book, and it's not on Facebook, by the way. So I'm not sure what's going on in. Yeah, it's not streaming on the other one. So that's okay. We'll let it fly on YouTube. All right. So if there, Miranda, who's in the other room, is watching by YouTube. So therefore, and I do see Annaline and Miranda. So it is showing up on YouTube for sure. So that's good enough. So go ahead, Misty, and we'll get your background a little bit, and then we'll kind of talk about what we're going to talk about.
Okay. I'm from Smiths Grove. I live just over the Barron line now, and I teach piano and ukulele. I'm a musician. I've done a lot of music with Michael in the past, and I've written 3 books and been published in magazines, 14. So we both have that in common about being writers.
Yeah, that kind of blew me away in a sense, because I think I reached out to Misty first to come. Hey, you want to come do this? Sure, we'll do this. And then I ran into Liz at some point, and we got to talking about would you be interested in coming on? And I think Liz was on last week, and Misty, I think you were out of town or whatever, and it worked out really well. And I thought, well, both of you bring a lot to the table, as far as your comments and thoughts on when we get into talking about the actual word and scripture. But it's always neat to hear the backgrounds and similarities for you guys specifically. I think that's really a cool thing. So we're going to take the first little bit of the show and we're going to talk about this book a little bit. It's interesting. See if I can get it in the picture. It's called, y'all seeing it clearly the right way? Oh, yeah. Okay. It's called Mixtape Theology. I knew Liz wrote the book. Wasn't able to get to.
I didn't write it. I didn't.
Was a part of it. Sorry, I keep saying that. I knew you were a part of this book in some form or fashion. I wasn't
Yes.
able to get to. It never worked out for my schedule, whatever, to get there. But I was telling them I don't know if you call it a photographic memory, but it's idemic memory or something where I see something and I recognize it right off the bat. And that's kind of what happened with this picture. I remembered from just being friends with Liz on Facebook and her talking about this or that. There'll be a book signing at church or over here or wherever, and it just kind of clicked with me. So we're down in Nashville at what we call Winter Jam, and Winter Jam is it's a pretty cheap to get in. It's like what, $10 to get in? Yeah, and it's a bunch of Christian Christian artists. It ranges from like let's see, what was it?
David Crowder, Lecrae, New Song.
New Song is kind of the spearhead behind it.
Yeah.
I think pushing it,
But
but they have
Kane was there too.
yeah different genres within the Christian field. So you have the hard rock, if you will. You have the rap or R&B. You have just all kinds of different variety, and it's a really good show. They do it in Louisville, or I don't know. I guess they're in Louisville,
They
and
do it throughout the country. They do it.
yeah, there's like a tour they get on. But the cool thing about it is you can take your family for $40. If you're really cheap, don't buy them food or nothing. You go in there for $40. But to see my son and my daughter, for that matter, Kane was my daughter's favorite group at the time in that moment. And my son was just kind of getting exposed. They listen to the radio going into school, whatever, on the way to school. And then he's seen Seventh Day Slumber for the first time with the
Amazing.
fire and the sound that they had. And his eyes were big as saucers. He looked at me and said, "This is awesome." I was like, "Yeah."
Yes.
I was like, it's not just, out in the secular metal field or whatever. It can be, within the Christian field too, as far as that hard hitting stuff. That's what I like anyway. But so we're sitting there and we're waiting for the show to start, if you will. And they're doing advertisements on this big screen, and up pops this book. And I'm like, I've seen that book. Oh my goodness. And so it kind of it spurred a conversation, so Liz was gracious enough to give me a copy, and so I am going to start into that. But she is a cartoonist, which is a unique, what do we say, lane, I guess, for maybe Christian literature, I guess you'd say. So it's not something you hear of every day. So I think it's really a cool groove. So we'll start with you, Liz, and just kind of give us the backstory to how this transpired.
Okay, and forgive me, I am coming down with something, and it's right at the beginnings, and it's like, So I am a huge DC Talk fan. Like, I have loved them since 1992, and they are just a part of me. And Toby Mac, he is my man. I love him dearly. He is. I always say he was my Billy Graham. He would feed my spirit in a musical way. And so we're sitting there. I had started doing comics as I went through the Bible. I just started reading the Bible, and so I started making comics about what I saw in the Bible in my Liz brain. And then at Christmas, I told my husband, I was like, you know what? I need a DC Talk shirt. I said, I've been a fan for over 30 years. I've never had a DC Talk shirt. I need one. And so he's like, well, order you one. So I ordered my one, and I wrapped it and put it under the tree. And then my husband had gotten me an iPad so I could do all of my my comics digitally, and I could correct them, because after you drew them, I would trace them with permanent mark. If I made a mistake, I was like, crap. Well, and so I made a comic of me getting my DC Talk shirt. And so the comic went like this, where I have a thing where I vocally stem. And so I would run around the house wearing it for 2 weeks straight, going, you know, who's doing it? And then my daughter would go, God is doing a new thing, or yo, who's doing it? So I did that constantly. And after the first week, my daughter's like, just stop. And I'd be like, come on. And then I'd bribe her, you know, and she's like, no, I'm done, you know. And so then I was like, put plans for my deathbed. And it's like, got me, and I'm all hooked up to machines. And, you know, I'm like, you hear me whispering something, and my son's going, Gwen, she's trying to say something. And she's like, what, Mama, what? And I'm like, closer. She's like, what? I'm like, closer. And she's like, tears, like, what, Mama? And I'm like, you know who's doing it? And then like, I flatline, you know, and it's like, so it's just, and that comic got out. And then there was one other one I think I did of like misheard lyrics that I had thought was, and one of us take this mug for a ride, but all these years I felt like an idiot. I thought it was take this mop for a ride, and I was like, that is the dumbest lyric. Never looked into it. So I'm like, I really wonder what they said. And then when I realized that I'd been saying for 20 something years, take this mop for a ride. And so I wrote a comic about that. And these had gotten the attention. I'd post them in the DC Talk fan group. And then it caught somebody's eye. And then a woman reaches out to me. She goes, I have something you might be interested in. And, you know, of course I'm thinking, well, somebody like be an ambassador for our brand, you know? And I'm like, so I wasn't going to answer it. I was like, no, I'm going to answer it. And I like, okay, what, you know? Mm-hmm. And she starts talking, and she's like, we're doing a book about 90s Christian culture and Christian music. I think you'd be great for this book. So we did a Zoom call. As she is describing it, I knew 90s Christian culture. I knew 90s Christian music. Like, I still repetitively listen to it. Like, that is, I still live off of that. And
that's your jam.
Yeah, it is. And it's like everything, it was like God, everything. And it was like here. And I just totally was like, I'm in. What do I have to do? Just take my money. I don't care, you know. Right, but no, and I got to be a part of this, and I got to come up with just tons of comics about the culture and the music, and, you know, down to the True Love Waits. There's this running joke that I had. Every guy I knew wanted to marry Rebecca St. James. Some of it was kind of creepy. And so even that, like, I had one comic that didn't even make it in there, but it was like, you know, the date she got married, and it's like the sound heard around the world. And it's like, on this date, Rebecca St. James got married, and you have all these guys going, no, because they dreamed that she was the one. So, you know, but then they saw my Liz Humor comic page, and they loved my work. And then Liz Humor Comics got to be a part of a book. So
that's too cool. It's a cool story. And you never know what God's got for you, you know. It's just another, you know, it's just like I was sharing, I guess, well, over the last couple of shows, I guess, you know, I went from being a school bus driver to a substitute teacher at 50. And it's like, but I'm enjoying it. I enjoy what I'm doing, you know, getting to spend time with the kids and, you know, try to instill in them some good things, you know. And Lord knows that the world is trying to snatch them away from us. So, you know, the more we can inject these kids with positive things, such as, you know, the 90s stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and let me, before you do that, I'll pop this picture up for you. So this is the copy. The book is called Mixtape Theology, a devotional and retrospective inspired by the 90s Christian music and culture. So let me ask you a question, and I'll pose this to both. Because you kind of come from two different wheelhouses in the sense of music, maybe. Now, Liz, I know her wheelhouse because I was, you know, we were good friends in college. Misty comes from, and correct me if I'm wrong, a Methodist background. Is that correct?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to be totally different per se, but at the same time, what were you listening to, Misty, at that around that age?
A lot of the same things, because I went to a small Methodist church, small
Mhm.
town. So, there are different types of churches. Some are more formal with the real structured, more rigid type hymns. But this was a
Where I
small,
grew up.
yeah. This was like a smaller country, small town church. So I can remember like going to New Song and
Yeah.
things like that when
And
I was
New Song Festival, that was a Methodist thing, right? I
up.
think.
Yes.
Yeah, where your county?
Yeah,
Michael.
up in Grayson County. Yeah. Let's see. I have we have some of us may have a mutual friend, Jamie Lawrence.
Yeah, I know
He's
Jamie.
connected in with that.
Yeah.
And I think also Tyler, I think, was connected in with that. Tyler West, I think. If I'm my mind's not going crazy.
Tyler also he loved to go to Cornerstone. It was in Illinois.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of those festivals have went, bye-bye, and some of them they're trying to rekindle or get them back out of the ashes or whatever. I think from a musical standpoint, that whole 90s, I think the 90s for Christian music was probably the best era.
Yes.
Because you had, prior to that, the only real kicking bands that really, I mean, a lot of people would argue this, but I'm thinking back into the earlier, you had Petra,
Striper.
you had Striper, you had, what was it? Whiteheart, and what was it?
Carmen. You remember Carmen?
Carmen. Yeah. Carmen was good for what he did. But other than that, you had a lot of people that were not recognizable, like Joe English Band. If I don't know if you ever got a chance to listen to Joe English Band, but they were really good. And then there was the one that inspired me to start a band back in the day was Al Denson. He come out of the 80s, straight out of the 80s. But let's not forget Stephen Curtis Chapman and Michael W.
Smith.
Those two cats are still transcending. They're even to this day. But the 90s, when I think back on the 90s, I mean, I'm looking Audio Audio Adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
You had Jeff Moore in the Distance.
Newsboys,
DC Talk. And there were a lot of, and what was cool about them is they were transcending over from Christian and getting airplay on, secular radio stations in a lot of cases. So that was really cool. And it took, I think it took Christian music to a different not genre, but like just a different place that it wasn't able to get to before.
And I think too, it was able to minister the way music hadn't before. I mean, they don't make this modern day, this era right now is starting to get that fun stuff like it used to do in the 90s, like Forrest Frank. I will tell you, Forrest Frank is if Billy Graham and Toby Mac had a baby, it would be Forrest Frank. And he's got that fun back in the Christian music, but with the Toby Mac total lyrics, it just cut like, wow. My daughter will be like, man, she's like, that just hits me right there. And it's like, and it'll speak like it. And I told my daughter, I was like, Forrest Frank is your Toby Mac, is my Toby Mac was to me. And she's like, yeah. And it's where she'll just listen to him and God will just be speaking through him. And it's got that, funness back that before, in the last 15, 20, it's just been back to praise.
Is he the guy that did It's Going to Be a Good Day?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was down, but now I'm
That's my kids love that song. And it's catchy, it's peppy, it's kind of lifts you up, when maybe you're, who was in school, right? And that's not one of their jams in the morning to kind of get them fired up, to, hey, let's do this. It's God has made this day and we're going to rejoice and be glad in it. Talk about the book. What is in the book? What could the reader expect?
Well, first, the foreword is written by Mac Powell. We had Michael W. Smith, Rebecca St. James, C.C. Winans, Michael Tate. They all, endorse this book. but I like to call it, this is Liz's description of this. It's a interactive devotional, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So if you go in here at the very beginning, there will be a QR code somewhere and you can scan it. It'll take you to the playlist. You can go watch some of the videos. For copyright reasons, they couldn't put lyrics in the book and stuff.
Mhm.
But it's like the songs that we loved back then. What are they theologically now? What's the theological depth of these songs? It's a very biblically sound book. Like a lot of things now, they take the Bible and they just kind of like, woo, but this is very solid. And it takes the songs that we loved. And if you haven't heard from it, you can go listen, okay, I want to listen to that song or watch that YouTube video. And you can discover that song, listen to it, and then you can go and you can do the devotional for the day. And it's just like, they've got a lot of references. You can go check this person out or this thing, but it's so well written. And I had it at my disposal for months, but I wanted to experience it like everybody else.
Mhm.
And I did it as a devotional like everybody else when it came out. So it really is good. And the people who wrote it are amazing. And there's inside at the back, there's a scavenger hunt somewhere. Like there's a scavenger hunt. And they gave me like 20 or 30, and I ended up making like 100 and something. So all these things through each chapter is a thing for the scavenger hunt. So you can go through and you can find all the little things. And in one of the things, there's a maze that I made that you can actually do, like, because I'm that down to detail.
Mhm.
But it's just an amazing devotional. You'll see my comics throughout it. And if you were a Christian in the 90s, you will probably get some of them. Well, hopefully you'll get all of them, but some of them are very, very funny. I think they're all funny, but there were so many more I wish had gotten in the book, but they didn't. But
Sure.
If you go to my Liz Humor page, or you can go to the Mixtape Theology Book Club, if you get this book, you'll see somewhere down in the feed where I post some of them. One of them was like Rebecca St. James. She has like 3 different slots, and it was like letters from little girls, creeps, and then marriage proposals. And her mom's like, Rebecca, don't forget the creeps. They need Jesus too, and she's like, and she's writing back fan mail.
Yeah.
So they're just little weird, just cutesy little.
And Rebecca St. James is sister to, is it King and Country?
Yes, to Joel and them. Yeah.
Yeah. King and Country's they've kind of been on the scene, I guess, a few years now, but their Christmas drummer boy is I guess one of their most iconic spots as far as what they've been able to do. But
I got to actually see one of the first times they ever performed.
Oh,
They
wow.
were kids. This is sad. And I went home to my husband. I was like, they're not going to make it. It was like the first time they played. And here I am, like they're supposed to be like Rebecca. And now they're like amazing, and I love them. But I kind of like dissed them. I was like, I didn't think it would happen, but then they turned out to be absolutely amazing. And they were just kids, and they were just trying it. She was giving them a spot. And
right.
but anything I will say too, I'm wearing my shirt. My love for Christian music. I created, in the midst of this, I created a retirement home for aging Christian artists. And I called it Diverse City Retirement Home, based off of the Diverse City album from Toby Mac. So the premise of this is Toby Mac's family owns this, but I run it. And as you can see me, Miss Liz, and here's Kevin Max, because he's Sad Astronauts. He has a band called Sad Astronauts. So he's obsessed with spacemen. You have T-Bone, because I love T-Bone. Here's from Fleming and John. You have a Newsboys. He runs around with a Captain Crunch hat because they don't serve breakfast in hell. Rebecca St. James is chased around by all the old men in the neighborhood because, everybody wanted to marry her. I have Toby Mac, Michael Tate, Stephen Curtis Chapman, and he's got a stick horse that he rides around the home everywhere. So
saddle up your horses, right?
Yes. So throughout the home, there are all these music jokes, and I am the one trying to keep the home together. And there are so many bands in there. I've slacked lately because I've been being a mom and just getting stuff done. But I've got everybody in there from our time, and sometimes like one of them had Joel from King and Country in there.
Yeah.
And, one of them was really dumb, and it had them going over to England. And every time they said for King and Country, all the military old men would sit up and salute, because every time they said King and Country,
Yeah.
it's really stupid humor. But I have a very small following that gets it all. And then they'll make suggestions. Hey, will you do this? And I get to show T-Bone the ones I do of him. And he's in a wheelchair, which he doesn't need to be in a wheelchair. He just does it because of the wheels. And he likes the rims and stuff like that. And I'll say, hey, here's another one I did of you. What kind of car would you like to drive in this? And he'll say, oh, I'd love to have this car. But, it's just for me, it's just really, it's a work of love.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to make fun of these artists. It's because I actually adore these artists. And like Kevin Max, I'm so hard on him. And I just love that guy to death. And it's like he has a black sheep called Falwell that just wants to cause chaos. And Kevin always talks around as a poet, like Edgar Allan Poe, if he were in a nursing home. And there's just a lot of love that goes into this
Sure.
home that I've created.
So this thing you've done though, have you got any feedback from any of the artists? Has it ever caught wind to them yet?
Not really.
Never know.
That would be
I
neat.
don't think so. I don't know, but like in this book, I told you how big of a Toby Mac fan I am.
Mm-hmm.
He lost his son, Truett, and when Truett died, I bawled. I mean, it broke me, because these people that you listen to, they become part of your family in a sense. They're a part of you, but and so I did a little tribute to him and threw a little nod in there, because if he ever sees it, I wanted him to know that, his son was loved. True Dog was loved by us all. And but if they ever do, that would be an amazing thing if I ever got this. I've gotten to talk to, I think, the lead singer of PFR. He knows about it. Michael Card, I did get his permission, and he loved my comic. And then T-Bone, I get to share him with him. He gets laughs out of it, but it's not like, hey, let's meet up sometime. No, I'm not saying that. That's kind of creepy. But no, I'm just saying that it's like, I haven't really gotten like, oh, Michael Tate did get to approve one of the comics in my book, and it was the Michael Tate timeline chart, for his hair. So he did see that and did approve for it, because there were just so many things we had to they had to get around to make sure that there was not a copyright. Nobody would come back, Yeah. So Michael Tate actually did approve that. So he had to see that to approve it. So
copyright is about the worst thing on the planet. I mean, granted, you want to give the artist their due, but I mean, when I went to making my CD, it is such a taxing aspect to getting copyrights, either for the rights to the lyric of the song, and if you're using a backing track, you have to get rights for that, and then how many are you going to produce? It gets really technical. And that's why I didn't make a run of 500. I just ran 200, I think it was, and I still got plenty left over. But at the end of the day, if you want to, if it depends on where your heart's at, what's your reasoning for doing what you do, and it's got to be a passion, it's got to be a love, and no doubt, Liz, I've known you for a long time, and the one thing I can say truthfully is I remember, in college, how much you were into, the artist you mentioned, and it's neat to see that it's still there. I'm kind of that way, Al Denson stuff, I was like I said, big fan of his, and he did a lot of cool things. I think last I heard, he's out in Texas somewhere, Dallas, Fort Worth area. But he used to have a show on TV for kids that were dealing with some heavy stuff, things like that. So a lot of those guys and gals, they're a lot deeper than just the music they sing. I can't say that about all of the artists out there today, because unfortunately, and I won't go down the rabbit trail too far, but unfortunately, the music industry is dictating a lot of what we're getting nowadays. You got some that pierce through, like Casting Crowns is one that comes to mind that they're doing it their way overall, and they're coming out with some really, really good songs, really in-depth songs that reach a lot of different age groups. You know, I'll give you an example. I took my mom. She wanted to go. She heard they were going to be down there at Beaver Dam at the amphitheater, and so we went down, and she got to hear Casting Crowns because one of the songs really touched her heart. I think it's was it No Scars in Heaven, I think was what is the song.
Yeah.
And you know, we lost my dad in 19, or was it 20, Mom? You always correct me on that, but the time goes so fast, and you know, it's hard for me to keep up if it was 19 or 20 because of, you know, something that happened. I ain't gonna mention it because you get flagged if you mention that. So you all know what happened around that time. But anywho, but she also got exposed. What's that group? And I'm not a super big fan of them, but the guy from Ireland, they're out right now. You all know who I'm talking about. 2020. Yeah, we lost him in 2020.
You name a song?
Not off the top of my head. Now my kids probably could.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's got some good stuff, and he's from Ireland, and his backdrop videos was a lot of, you know, pictures of Ireland and all that. Good band, good solid band. It was just neat because Mom got exposed to some stuff. Now, of course, she didn't like it all. Of course, you know, she comes from a different genre. She comes from Southern gospel. But see, there's another example of where you can look at
We Are Messengers. No.
We the Kingdom. We the King. Okay, there you go. We the Kingdom. You know, they got some good stuff. You know, when if you really look at the lyric and kind of process the lyric, and like I said, Casting Crowns, they're as solid as a rock. And of course, Stephen Curtis, anything he puts out, I'm gonna listen to, because you know he's Stephen Curtis Chapman. And trivia question for you: do you know where he got his start at? Now, I think I may have said this to Misty, so if you know or remember, Misty, you got to keep your mouth shut on this one.
Don't remember.
Okay, so where did Stephen Curtis Chapman get his big break?
Jesus.
Well, yeah,
I do not know. My friend Rachel would probably be like, I know, but
I'll give you a little. I'll give you a minute just to think.
The what is it? I don't know.
I don't know.
All right. So first off, where is he from?
He's from Paducah.
He's from Paducah. He worked in the summers at a at the time famous amusement park.
Six Flags?
No. It's no longer there.
Opryland?
No, not Beach Bend. Opryland.
Was it Opryland?
He was
No
an
way.
entertainer at Opryland, and guess who discovered him?
Who?
Bill Gaither.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So now look at that for a minute. Bill Gaither, Southern gospel through and through, great songwriter. We know that. Discovers Stephen Curtis Chapman, who then winds up in contemporary Christian music, and now has had 9,000 Dove Awards, and he just got recently into the Grand Ole Opry.
Wow, I think I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Excuse me.
But it's neat because, you know, a lot of times, you know, if you grow up Southern gospel or you grow up just contemporary Christian, bless you. If you grow up contemporary Christian or you grow up here or there, I think a lot of times we stay in this lane instead of really taking a step back and saying, okay, you know, and me and Scott Howarth, who were, you know, he was my co-host for a little bit. We took songs and shredded them, went down and said, is it biblically sound? You know, we looked at it, you know, on certain songs or whatever. Some of them are biblically sound. Some of them are a stretch. and then some of them go from a different what's the word I would use, kind of a different denominational approach
Mm-hmm.
than say maybe with Methodists and Baptists and things, we pretty much are in the same lane.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these are in a different lane, and they may be preaching a different type of gospel. So you have to, the listener needs to be responsible, I think, in that you really do listen to the lyric and as far as what you're putting in and what you're not. And some songs are written, yes, for instance, No Breakfast in Hell. I thought that was the corniest song I ever heard in my life. But when you, all the references to, food cereal, which is a commonality of all kids as we grew up, right? What was that other one there was another song about the cartoon characters that would say,
what was it? Was it Chris?
What
Tom?
if-
Not
what
Chris
if-
Tom- it was
It's
Chris
Scott-
Rice. Was it
something
Chris
like
Rice cartoon song?
Yeah.
maybe it's what is,
Song.
you can probably look it up on YouTube, but I mean it's like, what if this
Scooby-Doo
character
Scooby-Doo
said
and
hallelujah,
Aurora, yeah,
hallelujah, or
yeah, Yabba Dabba
Mickey
Doo,
Mouse.
yeah.
hallelujah, whatever, it was just a fun little song, and guess what it got kids' attention. And when you get kids' attention, and they're like, oh, I got to get that album. And then so mom or dad or whoever goes and buys the album, and then they're injected with some positive biblical sound songs that really can penetrate a lot of this heaviness or whatever a kid might be going through.
Yeah, and remember the times, like, you remember when I remember the first cassette I bought myself was a Wayne Watson cassette. And you do forget, we did sit and read the lyrics. And then, like, my friend Rachel says, like, and with Stephen Curtis Chapman, he'd always give a scripture.
Yep.
And you would sit there and you would listen to the whole album with the thing out, and you would read the lyrics or whatever. And I remember when DC Talk's Jesus Freak album came out, and I was going to Hendersonville, Tennessee to see Mark. Put it in the cassette thing, and I just sat there all day and listened to it. And and the other song said Jesus was In the Light. It just hit me, and I'm like, you would sit there.
That album transcended the time for which it was written.
DC Talk is the one album that changed with the times. I mean, they constantly change. Supernatural, oh my goodness, it was like they hit the 2000, and it's like they morphed with the time, and
it seemed like they stayed more connected than like Audio Adrenaline. Even I got to meet Mark Stewart, the lead singer of Audio Adrenaline. He was at our church not too long ago with a Christian comedian. I forgot the guy's name now. Tim Hawkins. That dude. All right. I'll be honest with you. I'll be real transparent. I am not a fan, or haven't been a fan, of Christian comedians, because it's like, I just never got into it. But I went with some friends, me and my wife, and this cat is legit.
Tim Hawkins is hilarious.
Tim Hawkins is great. And but the MC of the night, I think this was right. The MC of that whole thing was Mark Stewart. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I found him out in the atrium or whatever. And I said, can I get a picture with you, man? I said, I've loved Audio A for a long time, and Audio Adrenaline. And he said, yeah, man, so it was really cool to get a picture with him. But I got to meet him a little bit. Got to hear his story, after Audio A, which they were big at the time. They were running kind of sort of right along with DC Talk. And then Mark gets a problem with his throat where he can't sing anymore. And he shared some of that testimony, and make a long story short, I won't go into it too deep because we're already over time, because we're all talking about what we love. Misty ain't got to say about 5 words yet, so I'll get you in there in just a minute. But he started talking about they adopted a child out of Haiti, and there was an influence of one of the songs that they did called "Some Kind of Zombie."
Love that song so much.
Good. And I think that's some of the tie-in, maybe an influence of some of that during that time, because in Haiti they get into the zombie culture, or that
Witchcraft is very heavy there.
yeah, witchcraft, whatever you want to call that. So it was just interesting in how where God was through with him on that little area, and then changed him and placed him in a different place and doing something that was still connected. I just thought it was really a cool story. But anyway, all right, Misty. So you have sat here long enough. You have, had a few comments, of course, but we're going to give you an opportunity because you too are a writer and published author. So I want you to kind of share with with the folks that are listening, just kind of what you've been into with the writing side and how that all transpired for you.
Well, I always loved to write, always, like through childhood even. And I'd always wanted to write a book, but it was something I kept putting off because I just didn't know where to start. So I thought, well, magazines. So I submitted several pieces to like Christian magazine publications, not really expecting anything. And I ended up getting published 14 times in magazines. And that kind of gave me the push to go ahead and work on my books some more.
Mm-hmm.
Started with just like a small, like 100-page book. It was just like short stories from my life and poems and prayers. And I got some good feedback from that. So my second book was similar. It was just bigger, like thicker, more meat, things in it, but similar style. And then a few years ago, I released my first children's chapter book, for like grades 3 through 7, and it was fiction. So that was fun to write. So I got a release from that, like the sequel coming up, probably the end of January.
Right. And what's the title of your first children's book?
The first one was AJ's Quest for the Trophy. So it centers around a 6th grade girl who has these real high hopes and expectations. It's her final year of elementary school. She's sure that her friends are going to have all these adventures. Everything's going to go perfectly. She's going to win the school talent show. Those are all her dreams. And you get to guess what all's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the sequel's going to pick up with like another character from the first book, and she's going to become the main character.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
really
excited.
So, and then you did, and out of the clear, I think she was desperate looking for folks, but she reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you do would you write a devotional, or what? I think it's what it was, or how'd you label it?"
Years ago, I had a blog, and I was doing like a Lenten devotional for every 40 days of Lent. I was having
Okay, gotcha.
And I was not desperate, but I remember you writing for it.
Yeah. And I was like, wow. I mean, I had to really put my, as they say, the thinking cap on, and I think it turned out pretty well. I forgot what I wrote about now, but what a privilege and honor it was, just to have that opportunity. I was like, I'm not a writer, but I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I said, I don't think it's happenstance that these two ladies are here together, because maybe you never know what God's going to do or put together, or maybe you do a kid's book and you have cartoon pieces inside the book.
Yeah, because I can't draw.
I don't know. You cut out. I can't draw stick figures.
Okay. Yeah, I can't
So
either.
that's kind of where I'm at with it. Well, I take that back. I can draw. I was an art teacher the other day. Okay. So we had station for you're coloring just a picture, Christmas picture, whatever. You had a Lego area where you could just do what you want, make what you want, whatever. And then you had freehand drawing station. And I was just walking around, looking at what the kids were doing. Some of these kids, man, it's like, are you doing this by just looking at it? And they said, yeah. I said, I can draw that way. But as far as to not have anything in front of you and draw something, that is not in my wheelhouse. I can draw Scooby-Doo. If it's a cartoonish character, like some of Liz's work, I could probably look at it and draw it on a piece of paper. But as far as coming up with that in the brain and transferring it to the paper, it's like that's where it falls for me. But yeah, so I'm excited. Remind me, please, as we get near the end of tonight, because I don't think we're going to get through Hebrews 4 all the way, and that's fine. We don't have to. But I do want to give you all an opportunity to share where folks can reach out and look for your work and all that. Because let me ask you a real quick question, Misty. Have you ever did book readings with children?
Yes, and I would love to do more of that because I've done that with some Girl Scout groups and some summer camps and a few school groups.
Uh-huh.
You have any suggestions on how I can get into the schools? Because I really have, to a lot of people, like even though I think I'm active in the community, to a lot of people, I'm an unknown person. So when they get a call or email from this random person, I have trouble getting someone to call me back and get things set up. So if you
have you thought about calling the librarians of the school?
Yes.
And the family resource coordinator.
Yes.
And preschool teachers, sometimes preschool teachers like to have like authors to come and speak at the preschool. They'll have like, community week and stuff like that. So,
yeah. So, I was at a school this past week, and they had like a special presentation type thing, and it was like the whole 6th grade went in for this, or I forgot how many grades were in there at the time, but it was a representative from the Kentucky Derby Museum out of Louisville, Churchill Downs, that brought a bunch of stuff down, and it was very interesting, fun, but I think I would say, like what Liz said, or maybe even my recommendation, one of those I think is your first step. So hopefully, I'd like to see that. That would be cool for you to get in and to be able to spend time reading to kids and sharing about it and so forth. So at the end of this, just make sure I give you all time to, tell where your stuff is at so that people can go check it out or purchase it if they choose to, and so forth. Okay. So we'll wait for Liz. Well, we'll get started while Liz is taking care of what she's taking care of. Because we're gonna try to go. We're trying to get through it. We'll see how far we get. I don't know. Okay, you're back. So as I said, as we're in Advent week 2, and so who can tell me what the first week was of Advent?
First week was Hope, wasn't it?
Hope was your first one. So it's a precursor, if you will, to all that is coming through the Advent season. And then the second week, which is peace, as through Jesus Christ. He's our Prince of Peace. Peace in the midst of a storm, even. So the title, Hebrews 4, Entering into His Rest. I just thought it really tied in really well. Not, like I said, not on purpose. It just kind of fell this way. So I will begin reading. You guys, of course, have the ability to say, hold on a minute. Okay, because I'll read it, and then wherever we need to stop, we'll stop. Okay. I also have Enduring Word up, as I've been sharing. EnduringWord.com is a good commentary. I'm not promoting it more than any other, but that's one that I've found that's been pretty good. And so we'll get started. So a shout out. Let's just do shout outs real quick. Shout out to it says Faith, but I think it's Miranda, or it could be my daughter. And then also my Aunt Eileen for watching. And my mom got in here. And I'll figure that out because she was a little late. So I want to see if it had to do with buttons I pushed or something earlier. I don't know. Okay. So having said that, here we go. Therefore, while the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us fear lest any of you should seem to have failed to reach it. For good news came to us just as to them, but the message they heard did not benefit them because they were not united by faith with those who listened.
I want to stop right there.
Okay.
The message they heard did not benefit them because they were not united by faith. I think that I see that a lot of people who say, well, why isn't Jesus working? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I think a lot of people, they hear it and they hear the gospel. Jesus is constantly reaching out to people. but it doesn't benefit them because they're not listening to it at all, and they're not even united by faith. I mean, I think that's when you had them and the Israelites in the desert or whatever, how many of them were not united because they did not believe in the promises that God had given them, even after they had seen this. It trips me out. They'd seen the plagues. They'd seen they walked through the freaking Red Sea. They saw the mountains. I mean, all that. And then they forget. They forget. And then they doubt. And I think that right there is the message they heard did not benefit them because they were not united by faith. I think faith is so important. We have to be united in that. But how many people, you can try to help people as much as they can and tell them the truth of the gospel. But if they not hearing it, it's never going to benefit it. It's the thing they've got to actually, I don't know what what I'm trying to say is, but do you understand what I'm saying is people can hear it, but it's not going to benefit it until they get the faith.
You have a heart, you have a head knowledge, and you have a heart knowledge. And I heard a preacher say this. He took a tape measure and he said, let's measure from here to here. And it said it was roughly 12 inches from the head to the heart. And so he had a ruler he carries around with him as an example of this takes you to hell if you don't have this.
Yeah.
But if you have both of those connected, you're going to heaven because of the connection. This thing over here, this enduring word says rest means peace with God. And it's kind of like, I'm the same way that you're talking about, Liz, in the sense that you're kind of tripping because, they were there when the 10 Commandments were written. They were there at the Red Sea, all these different things, and yet they still within on a that quick turned away, if you will, and were not able to receive, if you will, the goodness of God because of that. Let's see here if there's anything else on that.
It says because those who listen, I think it goes down to listening. How many people, they aren't willing to surrender their desires, their wants. It's about it. It really is who's Lord of your heart. Are you like, how many people it'll work for a minute. It goes back to the seed being sown. It fell on certain soil and it flourished for a minute. But then when trial and tribulation came, how many people just don't listen to it because it doesn't fit their truth or their desire, and because it's not what they want.
Right. Well, and I've talked with both of you about this at different times. We're in that microwave society. I want it now. I don't want to wait for it. I want it now. If you're a God that's so good for us, then why are you not giving it now? And I think I learned a lot from, my experience that over the last 9 months or so, in a sense of to wait upon the Lord. I didn't have a choice. I really didn't have a choice but to wait because I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. And probably in there was some kicking and screaming, by me, and then at some point it's like, okay, well, as like a 2-year-old, that's not really working, that's not really getting his attention. He's sitting back watching all this, and when I finally got fed up with being fed up and I shut up and I started listening is when I started getting revelation, and he started kind of ordering my steps a little bit,
Yeah. Before we can rest, we have to be willing to surrender. And that resting is when you go to bed, if you were out in the wild, you're kind of open to any attack or anything, I know it's just a weird way I'm trying to say it.
No, it's true.
But in order to rest, we have to be able to surrender to come to rest. And sometimes that comes through brokenness or the point where you try to do it all yourself, and to the point nothing's worked, and you just have to collapse and say, okay, God.
Yep.
So
I think. Go ahead. Yes, Misty.
Your mom, I think it's your mom, Carolyn.
Yeah.
So-
Uh,
And
yeah.
didn't they?
Didn't they wish they had stayed in Egypt?
And they did. They said we'd have been better off if we had stayed in Egypt. And that always blew my mind how they were. I mean, they were abused and tortured in Egypt and had this horrible life. And here they'd seen the waters part and they'd seen manna come from heaven and water, and they still said we were better off then.
how many times do we forget the trial that came when we were in sin? Like, it wasn't that bad. I could handle, how many times have we probably done that? It's like, it wasn't that bad because we're away from it. We're not in the midst of it.
I think that's why people return to really unhealthy situations, because they get away from it, and that's what was comfortable. Even bad, that's what they knew.
It's like Linus in the blanket, right?
Yeah.
You go back to what, even though it can be deadly, it can be so hurtful, so destructive, we will return to that stuff.
I did a comic once, and it was like someone they just had this burden, just this thing just over them that they had been carrying on. So, and they laid it at the cross and they're walking off. But the thing is they feel comfortable in that oppression. We don't know what it's like to live in freedom. We want to run back to what we're comfortable. It's like, and it's just like, I don't think a lot of people know how to walk in freedom because they've been just surrounded by all that their life. I think we run back to what's comfortable to us,
whether it kills us or is on its way to trying to kill us or not.
Yeah.
And that's and to sit here and say that's a sad state for people to be in, but we've all been there.
Yeah,
to some degree.
I find myself, I used to, I never be an Israelite, dude. I am an Israelite all the time. I will go back, and it's like, I think the thing is with the pagan countries, you have Rahab, they feared the Israelites. They feared the God of Israelites. And some of them like, can I take this dirt with me and go worship your God, in the Bible, and they revered God. The Israelites didn't. They ran after the other gods. And I find that very interesting because I was like, when I was younger, I was like, I'll never be an Israelite. Throughout my life, I've been an Israelite a lot.
Yeah. And I know you had shared, you got into some, I think I'm right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Pagan stuff, witchcraft, etc., whatever. But at the same time, it's no different than if I put something ahead of God, and whatever it is, because God should be paramount at the forefront, at the spear of us charging forward, never to the back or whatever. He's always the centerpiece, or should be our centerpiece of how we walk this life. And, but Pastor Steve said it. I didn't get to catch it all today, but what I did catch was, he said, even your tribulation or your most toughest moments, he said, we keep thinking that peace is when everything's cool and laid and chill and no problems. But he said that's not what that is. It is when you are at peace with God that you can journey through a valley, or you can journey through something and know he hasn't left our side, and he's right there, and he's going to carry us through in some cases. Y'all remember used to be a big thing back in the 80s or late 70s, footprints in the sand. It was a poem, I think it was, or whatever. Yeah. And about, I only see one set of footprints, and he said, that's when I was carrying you. Bless you. But how many times do we, when you think about your life, I think about my life, and the listener thinks about their life, how many times have we not paid attention to the footprints? We just, where are you, God? We get in that modality of question, and God's not, it's not like the sacrilegious thing, questioning God. I think he is much bigger and much stronger and much more capable of handling our questioning side than just saying, no, you don't question me. That's not the Father I know. He understands our frustrations. He understands our times of weak faith.
And that goes back to what we're going to be hitting here in a little bit. The
Mhm.
scripture,
Let's carry on because I will run off at the mouth on this. For we who have believed enter that rest, as he has said, as I swore in my wrath that they shall not enter my rest. So basically, what I'm getting from that is that, let me get down here so I can get my cursor down here. That is, I'm not, oh, sorry guys. I apologize. I have not got this on the screen. Let me get that on the screen. One moment. There we go. Hope y'all can read that. Hope it's big enough size and everything. So although his works were finished from the foundation of the world, for he has somewhere spoken of the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works. And again, in this passage, he said, they shall not enter my rest. Since therefore it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly received the good news failed to enter because of disobedience.
That right there. Oh, wow.
Let me finish that piece up and then we'll stop. So let's start it again. I'm going to read that whole little blurb there. Since therefore it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly received the good news failed to enter because of disobedience. Again, he appoints a certain day, today, saying through David so long afterward in the words already quoted, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. Okay, we'll stop there. And let me get over here. We're at 6, so I can get there quickly. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna read this. I'll read part of this commentary out of here, and then we'll get y'all's feedback on it. Actually, let's start with y'all's feedback first, and then we'll go to that.
I think right here it says, and those who formerly received the good news failed to enter their rest because of disobedience. That just right there tells me to keep my spirit in check, because they were all promised the promised land. They were all walking towards the promised land, but it was their disobedience, their hardening of their heart, that they failed to enter that rest because they turned away from God. They didn't, their disobedience, that just really hit me hard because, we've all been given this ability to enter the rest of God, but how many of us have, I want to say, accepted it or turned away from it completely? I know people who's like, well, I did all that stuff, but then they just blatantly turn away from God, and then just that, and it's just the point. It's like we've all been chosen, we've all been predestined for the kingdom. But the problem is we have to accept it, and then we have to give our life to him, like surrender our life to him. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And that's just heartbreaking to me. It's because of our disobedience that,
Yeah, and that's something. Let me see. I'm going to try something here, so just bear with me, guys. Yeah. Excuse me. That didn't work like I was wanting it to. Let's go back to this. Okay. Anyway, I'm still learning on this thing, so I apologize to everybody. I think that who was it that wrestled with God?
Jacob.
Jacob. I think that brings that to mind a little bit in that we know deep down, we know what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But, the scripture where it talks about the flesh is weak, and when you're, and all the more reason, excuse me, all the more reason that when you get yourself close to God is to stay there, rather than doing this. I call it the spaghetti noodles all over the place. Try to stay in the lane with God stay close. And I think he is in such a time as this is calling us to draw close.
Yeah.
He's always telling us that, but I think in recent, excuse me, guys, I apologize.
You're fine.
Recent things that are going on, I think it's really, I don't know about you guys, but in my spirit, it's really, it's a strong pull to get back to center. What do y'all think about that statement?
Yes. And I think that comes right back to what it was in verse chapter 3 is your heart condition. It's what is our heart condition?
Mom says we have to trust. Absolutely. We have to trust. And it's we can say we trust, but our actions are going to show what we do and what we don't do. You know, though I go back to a song, a lot of things I relate to are songs. Though sorrow may last for the night, his joy comes in the morning.
Yeah.
And if we have that mentality of things that are coming, the anticipation of joy coming in the morning, I think it helps us pull through a lot of things that maybe we wouldn't pull through as well if we're not reminded of that, you know, and we have to trust. But when you think about the Israelites, going back to them for a minute, just them having seen all, they didn't even recognize they were being set free.
Mm-hmm.
They did not recognize that their chains were being broken. And the reason is because it wasn't right then. It was God doesn't, I mean, he can do anything he wants, but when you look at biblical stories, a lot of times it takes a season of time from point A to where at the end destination in something. Yes. And that journey is some of the biggest growth I have ever had. Maybe y'all heard this song. He's in the waiting.
Yeah.
Take courage, my heart. Stay steadfast, my soul. He's in the waiting. And that's where we're missing it as a collective group of Christian believers. Is it like I said, it goes from that we're that microwave society, I want it right now, instead of embracing the journey from point A to destination. And there's so much to be taught there.
I want to say this came to me when I was reading the Bible, and this is, I think, at the time of Abraham. So God tells Abraham, you can't go to this promised land because it's not ready for you yet. So he had that 500 years, the whole time the Israelites are thinking, God is having the giants and everybody in this land build up the land and making it fruitful and just beautiful so they can take it. So for 500 years, he's been preparing that land, and they were just having to walk through the wilderness to get to that land. The provision had already been made, but he had told Abraham, like at the beginning of the Bible, you can't go to this land yet because they have not made it ready for you guys to take yet. Mm-hmm. So all that time they were being enslaved, God's got their land, getting it ready and prepping it, and it's got vineyards and milk and honey. And so 500 years before that, he was already had the plans of getting that land ready for him. And it tells, I think it's Abraham. I don't know. You guys can Bible check me, but he's like, it's not ready for you yet. But he had them building up the land. So the enemy was in the territory, making the land for the Israelites for when they came to take it, which is just shows you God has the provision there. Mm-hmm. We just have to trust and be faithful and believe.
What was it, Abraham that took his son up to be sacrificed, and he was willing to go to that endpoint destination because of how much he believed, and then God at the last moment, pulled that from that sacrifice. Didn't have to happen that way, but what it did show is that Abraham was willing, and when I think about that. My son, my daughter, whatever. I was like, man, I don't know if I could do that or not, but this man was sold out. So
And I think that happened with when he had Isaac, because at first God didn't say when it was going to happen. And Sarah says, well, I'm going to make it happen. You need to do it this way. And so he did it Sarah's way, and then became chaos and friction. But then a year later, he had Isaac, and God had promised. I think that, I don't know if that is a test of his faith, but for it to happen then a year after, I think that's where Abraham was able to grow that faith to say that this did come to pass. I don't know.
Let's see here. I'll try to be quickly. We're still in 6 through 9. Okay.
You just want to read the rest, and we just put our input in after it?
Yeah, because I can get buried up in the enduring word weeds, and it's a good thing. But like I said, let's see. Save your voice. Do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken of another day later on. So then there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For whoever has entered God's rest has also rested from his works as God did from his. Let us therefore, and I'm going to say something here on this in a second, put a little dot right there about that last passage. Let us therefore strive to enter the rest, so that no one may fall by the same sort of disobedience. For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit. Hold on, guys. I got to put the word back on the screen. I apologize. Let's get that on their full screen for everybody. Okay, now we're back down. Give me just a second to get back. Sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the divisions of soul, of the spirit, of joints, of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And no creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give account. Okay. We'll come back to that. I just want to touch base on, pose a question, I guess, for this section where it's talking about a day of rest. Just as God rests, he expects us to rest. What do you say to that? Because I mean, in this culture, we have people who, work like the Dickens. Some are believers. So how do you approach that from a standpoint of, you have, let's say, a wife or a husband of a family that is providing for their stuff, their family, and it's a 7-day work week, or it's there's not a day of rest. What's your all's stance on that? I'm just curious.
Misty, I'm going to let you go first because I talk.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is on how we define rest. That's something too. Like, some people think of one thing as work while someone else thinks of that as a restful activity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some people think, do not mow your yard on a Sunday. And I think sitting on my big riding mower outside in the weather on my 4 acres, I'm praying, I'm singing, that's like totally restful to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you define what's restful or what's work for you?
Well, the judgment call is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Not by, your friends and colleagues, but by the nosy neighbor who, well, she says she's a Christian. She's out there mowing her grass on a Sunday. But what, if we get technical about it, Sunday was not a Sabbath day. It was a Saturday, according to Jewish tradition. So,
Jesus came and got away. That's part of the law too. So
true.
I do have opinion on this, but okay. Well,
I see. Well, let me say this. I see what Misty's saying. Mowing the grass, but yet you got your earbuds in or whatever, and you're out there singing to God, and you and him are having some quiet time, in a sense of mowing. But your time with God, I could see that. Yeah. So go ahead, Liz.
So I went through a class at Living Hope, and it was about holy habits, and it talked about the importance of the Sabbath. And I started breaking down the Sabbath. And the time, that is a time, I think Sabbath is important because we need to be able to rest because it energizes us physically, but it also energizes us spiritually. And what does it do when you come together and you rest? You get to come together as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you family time and family growth together, but it renews you spiritually and physically. Because if you were just work and every day, and you would not have time to sit back and then have that moment of peace to be able to let God speak to you. And I think it's a way to strip us from being able to just sit in a day with the Creator. I mean, and to sit together with your family, and that grows your family. Families are just torn apart now. I do think a Sabbath day is important, and it shouldn't be about let me do my own thing. I think it'd be a time where we come together. To me, Sunday is a Sabbath, but it renews you spiritually and physically, I think, and it also gives you a time to come together as a family and make family time. I mean, if it was important to God, it should be important to us.
But Misty, for example, I know you spend time with your mom. I don't know a whole lot about your backstory, but you're a pretty independent person. Do your thing. So how would you approach it with someone, say that is single, independent, living on her own, etc.? Same approach, because maybe she doesn't spend time with family. Like, say, I've got 2 youngins and a wife, and you've got a husband and some kids. It'd be a little bit different for her. So I see your point, and I don't think your point is invalid or by any means. And I see her point, and I think it comes back to what Mom said. Maybe this is about spiritual rest, in a sense that we're casting because if you go back to the scripture, talking about basically even on the Sabbath day, if I'm paraphrasing Kentucky style, but like the guy who gets his mule in the ditch or whatever it was, are you not going to stop and help him? Of course we would. Now that's work, because I'm sorry, mules is not going to just go, okay, no problem, I'll get out of the ditch. No, that's not how it works with a mule. And there's going to be sweat. There's going to be, dirty hands and dirty elbows and whatever it might be to get that fixed or, resolved. Same principle would be for me. If I'm driving down Cemetery Road and a car's broke down, I'm more apt, whatever day it is, to stop and lend a helping hand. And I think we're all on that page of, well, I'm not going to do that because it's my Sabbath day. I think we would all probably agree that someone in dire need in a moment, we're going to do whatever it takes. I think I lean more towards what Mom is saying of spiritual rest, in a sense that, I'll be honest, for me, I don't like to mow on a Sunday. I do for me and my family. I do like, we have, I don't know if you call it a ritual, but it's what we do. We go to church, we go out to eat. We may go do a little shopping, whatever, and then we come home, and so forth. That's just our pattern of living. But there have been times couldn't get to, for whatever reason, I couldn't get to mowing on Saturday per se, or Friday evening. So I had to make an adjustment. But then I go back and I say, okay, well, what did I do Saturday? Well, if my Saturday was filled with me and my family doing activities together, that's spiritual rest as well.
Yes, it is.
In a sense. So I think we're all on the same page, but I think we need to be intentional about finding these moments within our life where we take a serious heartfelt pause and give God his due. Of course, we should be doing that every day, but given setting aside some time that we are resting, because let's be honest, none of us are any good to this world if we're not rested. I'll give you an example. I played bass today. I had a terrible time last night sleeping. Did I play my best from my perspective? The answer is no. Okay. And that bothers me a little bit. However, I went in there with the best of intentions. I've had other people to say, oh, it was good, or, whatever. They got a blessing from it, whatever. That's my job, is to do my best to lead people, as they say, to the throne room of God. And then once there, they take and go where they're going to go with God with it, right? We're providing an atmosphere, if you will. Some people who are really good musicians could say, man, you missed that note, whatever. But those that are engaged in the moment, they don't even hear those notes. And I think it was you, Liz, last week, maybe, where you were talking about your belated mother.
Mm-hmm.
And you had moments of time where you're at the altar worshiping God, or whatever it was, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a kind of a revelation, epiphany, or revelation, whatever it was, that at the same time that you're right there
worshiping God, at that same moment, I am at one with my mother's spirit, worshiping God in the throne room with her at the exact same time. We are united that minute, that moment. I might be on the earthly, she might be on the heavenly, but that 1 minute, we're in eternity at the throne room of God, praising God together.
Yeah. And I thought, man, what a powerful thought.
We
all of us, whoever listens to this on replay or live tonight, we all have people that we miss dearly, and we have that opportunity. It's a beautiful picture of God's grace and mercy, because in those moments where we might miss them the most, the closest we can be with them is that moment you're talking about. And I was like, man, it really just, I don't know, that maybe it just paints a picture in my mind, Of course, I've lost my dad in 2020 and all. But for someone who's missing a spouse or a child or whatever, what a beautiful thought, Any other comments, you guys? We got through the reading. I would say this about 11. Put it back on the screen for everybody, if I can do it right. Let's therefore strive to enter that rest, so that no one may fall by the same sort of disobedience. So basically, say an example. For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing the division of soul and spirit, of joints and marrow. So he's going all the way to the bone. There's nothing we can hide from him. And it's interesting how we all try to hide stuff from him. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
It seems like we are constantly, I think that's the struggle between the flesh and the spiritual. You have those moments where you veered off track and you're doing your very best to hide it. And we know if we're honest with ourselves, he sees it all. And yet he still has grace and mercy upon us. He still is calling us, drawing us near to him. Mom said, I think common sense enters in. There's not much floating around today.
That's true.
Yeah. We're in a very short supply of that anymore.
We're in common sin, not common sense in this society.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good word. Common sin, not common sense. Yeah, people just do whatever they want, it seems like, and don't give any attention to the consequences of what they're going through. Well, why would God allow me to go through this or that if he's a loving God? Because he's also a just God, you know?
We live in a fallen world. I mean, it's like everybody wants to know, and you know, Jesus is just not going to go for everybody. I mean, with me, it took 11 years for healing, and I would be like, why? But it took me drawing close to him and then trusting him and believing him that no matter what, even if I was not healed, I was spiritually healed in my spirit. But, you know, even though I wasn't, you know, healed physically, I knew I was healed spiritually. I just said that, you know, but as I drew closer to him and trusted him and believed in him, that healing came as I connected to him and I drew closer to him.
Yeah. Misty, you got any comments right now?
I don't think so.
Okay. Let me take a quick look. We're well over time, and I appreciate you ladies hanging with me and all those that are in here. It's a good study for sure.
Yeah. I think verse 14 through 16 applied with what you were saying earlier about high priest that understands everything. You know, I think we forget Jesus went through suffering and pain. Mm-hmm. And when I was going through my illness, I was bloody. I mean, from wounds from everywhere. And God had to remind me and showed me this, that we have a high priest. Jesus lost family. He was lied to. He was betrayed. He was hurt. He was all these things. He can understand. He understands. And we don't think he can, you know, I guess we put him on his cloud, like he's so separate from us. And, you know, I think we forget to realize that he was human too.
That's the hard part for other religions to grasp is, you know, when you talk about the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, all three in one, they cannot understand why God would make himself through his Son into a human being. But if I'm going to follow somebody, I think I'm going to follow someone who actually walked in the shoes of which I'm trotting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not someone who supposedly 500 years later, you know, had a revelation about who Jesus is, whatever. I may have mentioned this before. Cliff Kalecki is a apologetic.
I love Cliff.
Cliff is awesome. And he goes on the campuses, these higher end, like, I don't know, whatever they are.
Yale,
Harvard, yeah, those places. And he'll just have friendly conversations, debates with these students. And a lot of them are atheists. A lot of them are coming from, you know, Islamic or other nationalities and belief systems, and just tries to have a dialogue about, you know, why do you believe what you believe, you know? And I think that we all should be challenging ourselves of, well, why do you believe what you believe? Is it just hand-me-down stuff that you got from, excuse me, parents, grandparents, or is there a true connection point for the individual? And as we kind of wrap this up tonight, soul and spirit are so important. And I say soul and spirit because I was looking at this enduring word, and it keeps popping up in bold letters throughout all this about the soul and the spirit. Remember, like we said, it's 12 inches from here to the heart. That's the difference between heaven and hell. And you have to get it out, not just be in your head. You've got to get it in your heart. And when you get it in your heart, it's just like saying, you know, you're passing by somebody you're acquaintance with, you know, and you might say, love you. And they'll say, love you too, you know, and it's a passing thing, right? And it's gone. But when it's someone who is close to you or you have journeyed with, the I love yous take on new meaning with children or with a parent or a grandparent or people like that. And it's like, um, that's the having the head knowledge of Christ is that's great. You know who Christ is, but do you know who Christ is for yourself personally? That's where it all boils down to. So for those listening, I just challenge you that if you've got the head knowledge but not the heart knowledge, we all encourage you to seek out through Scripture, through any means necessary, pastors, whatever, to really get and understand who Jesus truly is and how much that He actually loves us individually is breathtaking, overwhelming.
The book of John, start in the book of John, that tells who He is.
Yep. And I'm just spouting things, but He knows the very hairs on our heads. He knows exactly how many. He knows, I always talk to the kids about their fingerprint. Every fingerprint on every individual is so unique,
I was thinking about the hairs on your head the other day, and it just dawned on me. Heard that so many times, and I just sat and I was floored because God loves us so much that He knows the hair on. He counts the hair on the head because out of love for us. I never seen it that way. I just sat there and I was mind blown. He just knows it. No, it's because He loves us that He cares about it. He knows every detail of us.
There is it's floated around on Facebook. Maybe y'all seen it. It's Jesus at a potter's wheel with a baby.
Yes, I've seen that.
Molding and shaping and all. And I was like, man, what a powerful picture that is. That's just how much God truly cares for each of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. So, ladies, okay, really quick, because again, we were having a good discussion, but I do want to give you opportunity to share. Misty, we'll start with you. As far as where can people find your work, maybe if they would like to check out your books and so forth.
They can look me up on Amazon. It's
Okay.
under Misty L. Butler, or I have a website at mistylbutler.com.
Okay.
You can find me on Facebook under the same name.
Yep. She's a nice person. She'll probably befriend you. Unless you're a creep, then she'll probably kick you out. So just be sure you're not a creep.
Yes,
But,
just give me a request.
but
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, but remember what Liz said about Rebecca St. James. You gotta love the creeps too. So now, what was you? Go ahead. I'm sorry. What was you going to say?
Facebook, Amazon, and my website under my name, mistylbutler.com.
mistylbutler.com. So check her out for sure, and get all what you can order. I'm sure there'll be some really good stuff in there because I've known Misty a long time, and she's a legit creature of God's creation. That's for sure. Liz,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
As I say, I have enjoyed this, but I've got some kitties who are mad at me, so I'm
Yep.
going to have.
Yeah, that's fine. We got you covered. Thanks for coming in.
My doggy's sleeping right there.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. And Liz, go ahead and see you. We'll see you, Misty, next time we get together.
Sounds good. Bye.
Liz, go ahead and share with real quick on that for you.
Mainly my stuff is on Facebook. You can go to Liz Humor Comics on Facebook, or my blog, which is Squishy Stardust blog, SQUISHY space STARDUST blog.
Okay.
And it's got a lot of my writing there and my thoughts as I spend time with God. And it deals with like heart issues, witchcraft, and different things that God has kind of shown me as I spend time with Him.
There you go. And what we can also try to in the future maybe create some what's the word I'm trying to find? Make it like a flyer where it connects in, where people, we can pop it on the screen and it has your information. We can work on that in future for both of you guys in regards to that. But thank you also, Liz, for coming in, being a part. So we will be going into Hebrews chapter 5. We'll take a look, and Liz and I, if nothing else, and see where we're at with our schedules on the next week or not, or two, or we'll see where we're at. And I'll get that out as soon as we know on that. So, but until then, we thank you so much. Shout out again to my mom, my Aunt Aline, Miranda that came in.
And get the book, get Mixtape Theology.
Yeah, and that's also mixtapetheology.com has it out there too.
Shout out to Rachel Cash and Ashley Mofield, my peeps.
Your peeps, yeah. And so glad you got that opportunity. That's just a really cool opportunity. So yeah, so if anybody, especially since a lot of my family in here, if you are interested in that book, you can also reach out to me on Facebook, and I will get that information to you for y'all to be able to get that book. I think you said it was on Amazon, I think as well.
Yes, and I have about 10 that are all autographed. So if you want to get an autographed copy, that would be $18, but you can get it cheaper on Facebook, not Facebook, Amazon for like 14 or 15.
Okay, gotcha. So up to you on how you do that. I would say that would be a great stocking stuffer, but you might need to have a bigger stocking to get that book in the stocking. But it's a great stocking stuffer for sure, if nothing else. But I think that book is there'll be a lot of good content in there for a devotional. Kind of gives you a different view of the music approach at that time, and maybe set some things straight for some people, in that regard too as well. So we appreciate you coming in, and this be watching for the next advertisement of the next one, and we'll see you next time on the Big Dig Live. We'll see you.